The Golden Coast Mall stood like a gleaming fortress of luxury, its polished marble floors and designer storefronts a stark contrast to the world outside. Through its grand entrance walked Jasmine Richardson, her presence commanding attention with each confident step. At 45, she had built her tech empire, Cyberfusion Industries, from nothing but determination and raw talent. Her designer heels clicked against the floor as she navigated through the crowded mall, her silk blazer and perfectly styled hair marking her as someone who belonged in the world of wealth and privilege. Security guards nodded respectfully as she passed, recognizing one of America's most successful Black entrepreneurs. Near the mall's east entrance, beyond the pristine windows and carefully curated displays, 12-year-old Marcus huddled in his oversized jacket. His dark eyes scanned the steady stream of shoppers, looking for kind faces that might spare some change. The jacket, 3 sizes too big, had been his father's. Now, one of the few possessions he had left after the fire that claimed both his home and his parents 6 months ago. Jasmine paused outside Lux Time, an exclusive boutique known for its rare designer watches. Her fingers traced the store's window, examining a limited edition timepiece that caught her eye. At $75,000, it would barely make a dent in her fortune, but old habits died hard. She still remembered the days when such a sum seemed impossible. Marcus watched her from his spot near the entrance, his stomach growling. He recognized her from magazine covers and news reports. Everyone knew Jasmine Richardson's story, from struggling single mother to tech billionaire, but something else caught his attention. A man following quietly behind her, his movements too deliberate to be casual. Marcus shifted uneasily, his heart racing as he watched the man's calculated movements. The stranger wore an expensive suit that somehow didn't quite fit his demeanor, his eyes constantly darting between Jasmine and her designer handbag. His hand kept brushing against his jacket pocket, a gesture that made Marcus's skin crawl. Jasmine stepped into Lux Time, her mind already on the business meeting she'd have later that afternoon. The shop assistant's eyes lit up with recognition, rushing forward to greet their high-profile customer. The stranger lingered outside for a moment before following her in, positioning himself near a display case that offered a clear view of Jasmine. Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He'd spent enough time on the streets to recognize danger when he saw it. The way the man moved, the calculated distance he maintained, it all spelled trouble. Before he could second-guess himself, Marcus slipped through the mall entrance, his worn sneakers silent against the polished floor. Inside Lux Time, Jasmine examined the watch she'd spotted from outside, chatting with the eager sales assistant about its specifications. The timepiece gleamed under the boutique's carefully arranged lighting, its diamond-studded face catching every ray. The stranger moved closer, pretending to examine a case of leather watch bands. "This particular model is one of only 50 made worldwide," the assistant explained, her voice carrying the practiced enthusiasm of luxury retail. Jasmine nodded, already reaching for her credit card. That's when Marcus saw it, the stranger's hand emerging from his pocket, something metallic glinting between his fingers. Without thinking, Marcus burst forward, his voice cracking as he shouted, "Wait! Don't buy it!" The entire store fell silent. Jasmine turned, startled by the sudden interruption. The security guard at the door stepped forward, ready to remove the seemingly unruly child. Marcus didn't care about the guard or the judgmental stares from other customers. His eyes locked with Jasmine's as he pointed toward the stranger. "That man's been following you. He's got something in his pocket. I think he's going to hurt you." The stranger's face contorted with rage as he realized his cover was blown. In one fluid motion, he pulled out a small revolver, causing gasps to ripple through the store. The security guard reached for his radio, but froze when the weapon swung in his direction. "Nobody move," the man growled, his refined facade crumbling. "Mrs. Richardson, let's make this simple. Your jewelry, watch, and that fancy handbag. Hand them over." Jasmine stood perfectly still, her years of business negotiations evident in her steady composure. Her eyes moved from the gun to Marcus, understanding dawning on her face. The boy had seen what everyone else had missed, had cared enough to speak up when others would have looked away. "You're making a mistake," Jasmine said calmly, her voice carrying the same authority she used in board meetings. "The police will be here in minutes." The armed man's laugh was hollow, desperate. "By then I'll be gone," he snarled, stepping closer. "And so will your valuables. Now hand them over." His hand trembled slightly, betraying his nervousness. The other customers pressed themselves against the walls, some quietly crying, others frozen in fear. Marcus watched the scene unfold, his heart pounding. He could have run, should have run, but something kept him rooted to the spot. Maybe it was because Jasmine's face reminded him of his mother's. Or maybe it was because he was tired of watching bad things happen to good people. The security guard inched toward his radio again, but the movement caught the robber's eye. "I said don't move!" he shouted, swinging the gun back toward the guard. In that split second of distraction, Marcus acted. He grabbed a heavy display stand and sent it crashing to the floor. The sound of shattering glass and tumbling metal filled the store. The robber spun around, startled by the noise. It was all the opening Jasmine needed. In one swift motion, she swung her heavy handbag, catching the man's arm and sending the gun skittering across the floor. The security guard rushed forward, tackling the would-be robber, as other mall security converged on the store. In the chaos that followed, the shouts, the sirens, the flood of police officers, Jasmine's eyes found Marcus. The boy stood amid the broken glass, trembling but upright, his oversized jacket making him look even smaller than he was. "Come here," she said softly, extending her hand. Marcus hesitated, suddenly aware of how out of place he looked in the luxury store, but something in her eyes drew him forward. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Jasmine's carefully maintained composure cracked, tears welling in her eyes as she looked at the young boy who'd risked everything to help her. Jasmine knelt down to Marcus's level, her designer suit collecting dust from the floor, but she didn't seem to care. "I'm okay because of you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "But what about you? What's your name? Where are your parents?" Marcus shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting toward the exit. The police were handcuffing the would-be robber, and store employees were already beginning to clean up the broken glass. "I'm Marcus," he mumbled, pulling his father's jacket tighter around himself. "And I don't have parents anymore." Jasmine's breath caught as she noticed details she'd missed before. The worn-out sneakers, the unwashed hair, the way his clothes hung loose on his thin frame. "How long have you been on your own?" she asked gently, careful not to spook him. 6 months, Marcus replied, his voice cracking. "There was a fire. Mom and Dad, they didn't make it out." He blinked rapidly, fighting back tears. "The foster home wasn't, I couldn't stay there." The police officer approaching them paused, recognizing Jasmine. "Mrs. Richardson, we'll need a statement from both of you," he said professionally, but his eyes softened when he looked at Marcus. "Of course," Jasmine replied, but her attention remained on Marcus. "You must be hungry," she said softly. The boy's stomach growled in response, answering for him. A faint smile crossed Jasmine's face. "Let's take care of that first. Officer, can we give our statements over lunch?" The officer nodded, understanding the situation. As they walked toward the mall's high-end food court, Jasmine noticed how Marcus stayed close to the walls, how his eyes constantly scanned for exits, survival habits learned too young. "Order anything you want," Jasmine said as they approached the restaurants. Marcus stared at the menus, overwhelmed by choices he hadn't had in months. Finally, he pointed tentatively to a burger combo. Jasmine watched as Marcus devoured the burger, trying to maintain his manners despite his obvious hunger. She ordered more fries when she noticed how quickly the first batch disappeared. The police officer sat nearby, patiently waiting while taking notes. "The fire," Jasmine said carefully, her voice gentle. "What happened that night?" She noticed how Marcus's hands trembled slightly at the question, but he didn't shut down. "Dad was working late at the factory," Marcus began, his voice barely audible. "Mom always kept candles lit because the electricity was expensive. I woke up to smoke." He paused, taking a shaky breath. "The firefighters said it was an electrical problem, old wiring. Mom tried to reach my room, but..." Jasmine reached across the table, her manicured hand resting near his. "And the foster home?" she prompted softly, though her eyes suggested she already knew the answer. "They had too many kids," Marcus said, looking down at his half-eaten burger. "The older ones, they took our food, our stuff. The parents didn't care. They just wanted the checks." His voice hardened. "So I left. Better to be on my own than..." He trailed off, but Jasmine understood. She sat back, memories flooding her mind, her own struggles as a single mother, the nights she'd gone hungry so her daughter could eat, the years of fighting to build her company while the world told her she couldn't. "You know," she said, dabbing her eyes with a napkin, 20 years ago, I was living in my car with my daughter." Marcus looked up, surprised. "The newspapers don't like to tell that part of my story. Everyone focuses on the success, the money, but I remember what it's like to have nothing except hope." The police officer finished taking their statements, respectfully stepping away to give them privacy. Jasmine leaned forward, her voice taking on a tone of quiet determination. "Marcus, what you did today, that wasn't just brave. It showed character. You could have walked away. Most people would have. But you chose to help someone even when you had nothing to gain from it." Marcus shrugged, embarrassed by the praise. I couldn't let him hurt you. You looked kind like..." He swallowed hard. "Like my mom." Tears spilled down Jasmine's cheeks, her carefully applied makeup creating dark streaks. She didn't bother to wipe them away. The boy's simple words had struck deeper than any business deal or accolade ever had. "Marcus," Jasmine said, her voice steady despite her tears, "I want to help you. Not just with a meal or some money, but really help you." She reached into her designer bag, pulling out her phone. "I have a friend, Judge Thompson. She can help us make this legal, make it right." Marcus stiffened, fear flashing across his face. "I'm not going back to foster care," he said quickly, already calculating the distance to the nearest exit. But Jasmine shook her head. "No, Marcus. I'm talking about something else entirely." She took a deep breath. "My daughter Jessica is grown now in college. Our house is too big for just me. What I'm trying to say is if you're willing, I'd like to give you a home." The words hung in the air between them. Marcus stared at her, his dark eyes wide with disbelief. "You don't even know me," he whispered. "I'm just some kid from the streets." "You're the kid who saved my life today," Jasmine corrected gently. "The kid who had nothing but still chose to help someone else. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are." She pulled out a business card, writing her personal number on the back. "I know it's a big decision. You don't have to answer right now, but tonight, you're not sleeping on the streets." She was already dialing another number. "I have a suite at the Grand Peninsula Hotel. You'll have your own room, clean clothes, a hot shower, just for tonight. No pressure about tomorrow." Marcus's hands trembled as he took the card. The possibility of safety, of warmth, of belonging. It seemed too good to be true. "Why?" he asked, his voice cracking. "Why would you do this for me?" Jasmine's eyes softened as she looked at him. "Because 20 years ago, someone took a chance on me. A stranger who became my mentor, who believed in me when no one else did. She changed my life." She reached across the table, gently squeezing his hand. Sometimes the biggest blessings come from the most unexpected moments. As Marcus sat there, struggling to find words, a mall security guard approached their table. His hand rested on his belt, eyes narrowing at Marcus. "Mrs. Richardson, is this boy bothering you?" he asked, his tone carrying an edge of suspicion. Jasmine straightened up, her business persona sliding back into place. "This young man saved my life today," she stated firmly, her voice carrying the authority that had built her empire. "He's my guest." The security guard's expression shifted from suspicion to surprise, then embarrassment as he quickly retreated. Marcus watched the exchange, a mix of emotions crossing his face. For months he'd been invisible or unwanted, moved along from every place he tried to rest. Now, with a few words, this woman had transformed him from a nuisance to a valued guest. He started, then stopped, looking down at his hands. They were dirty, his nails still carrying traces of life on the streets. "What if I mess up? What if I'm not what you expect?" Jasmine's laugh was soft, genuine. "Marcus, look at me." She waited until his eyes met hers. "My first company failed. My second barely survived. I burned dinner so many times my daughter thought black chicken was normal. Life isn't about being perfect. It's about trying, about getting up when you fall." She stood up, gathering her belongings. "Now, how about we get you some new clothes before heading to the hotel? That jacket," she paused, noticing how Marcus clutched the oversized garment tighter. "That was your father's, wasn't it?" Marcus nodded, unable to speak. Jasmine smiled gently. "We'll keep it safe, but maybe get you one that fits too. Something your dad would be proud to see you wearing." As they walked through the mall, past the luxury stores that had seemed like another world just hours ago, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in months. Hope. Not just for a meal or a warm place to sleep, but for a future. Inside Maxwell's department store, Jasmine guided Marcus through racks of clothes, her keen eye assessing sizes and styles. The sales associates hovered nearby, their expressions a mix of curiosity and uncertainty as they watched this unlikely pair, the tech mogul and the street kid. "Try these on," Jasmine said, handing him a pile of clothes. Marcus disappeared into the fitting room, his father's jacket clutched protectively under his arm. As he changed, he caught his reflection in the mirror, really saw himself for the first time in months. His eyes were the same ones that had watched his parents' funeral from under a borrowed black suit, but now they held something different, a glimmer of possibility. When he emerged wearing new jeans and a blue button-down shirt, Jasmine's eyes welled up again. "You look so handsome," she said softly, "just like a young gentleman." Marcus fidgeted with the sleeve buttons, unused to clothes that actually fit. "My dad," he said hesitantly. "He always wanted me to dress nice, said presentation matters." His voice cracked on the last word, memories flooding back of Sunday mornings, his father helping him tie his first tie. Jasmine nodded, understanding the weight of those memories. He was right, and we'll honor that. She turned to the sales associate. "We'll need everything. Casual wear, formal wear, shoes, accessories, and send it all to the Grand Peninsula Hotel, Suite 1402. As they continued shopping, Marcus noticed how Jasmine deflected curious stares with quiet dignity. When one shopper did a visible double take, she simply smiled and adjusted Marcus's collar like any mother would. At the shoe store, while Marcus tried on new sneakers, Jasmine made quiet phone calls. He caught fragments of conversations. Something about emergency guardianship, about getting him enrolled in school, about therapy appointments. "Mrs. Richardson," he said suddenly as she was examining a pair of dress shoes, What if this is all a dream? What if I wake up tomorrow and I'm back on the streets?" "This isn't a dream, Marcus," Jasmine said, kneeling beside him. "And you can call me Jasmine." She took his hand, her grip firm and reassuring. "Tomorrow and every day after, you'll wake up safe. That's a promise." Later that evening, as they entered the luxurious hotel suite, Marcus stood in awe. The room was bigger than his old house, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city lights. Bags of new clothes sat neatly arranged by hotel staff, and a room service cart waited with hot dinner. "Your room is through there," Jasmine said, pointing to a door. "There's a bathroom with everything you need. Take your time, get cleaned up, and then we'll eat." When Marcus emerged from his shower, wearing new pajamas, he found Jasmine sitting on the suite's terrace. She was on the phone, but ended the call when she saw him. "Feel better?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am," he replied, still uncertain how to act in this new reality. "Thank you for everything." "Marcus," she said, patting the chair next to her, "come sit with me." As he settled beside her, she continued, "You know, when I first started my company, everyone said I would fail. A single black mother with no connections, no Ivy League degree, they said I didn't belong in their world." She turned to face him, her eyes serious. "But here's what I learned. Family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about who believes in you when no one else will. Today, you believed in me enough to save my life. Now, it's my turn to believe in you." Marcus felt tears streaming down his face, but for the first time in months, they weren't tears of sadness. Jasmine wrapped her arm around him, pulling him close. "Your parents," she said softly, "they'd be so proud of the young man you are, and I promise you, Marcus, as long as I'm alive, you'll never be alone again." As they sat there, watching the city lights twinkle below, both knew their lives had changed forever. One act of courage had created an unbreakable bond, proving that sometimes the greatest gifts come from the most unexpected moments. Years later, when people asked Marcus about that day in the mall, he would smile and say, "That's the day I learned that heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear designer suits and have hearts big enough to save not just lives, but souls." If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like and subscribe for more tales of courage, hope, and the power of unexpected kindness. Remember, every act of compassion has the potential to change someone's world forever.